All right, strap yourselves in because we're going deep on this one. A legal battle that's gotten seriously out of control. Accusations against Diddy, and now Jay-Z's been dragged into it.
Yeah, it's intense, to say the least.
We've got excerpts from a TMZ live video that really breaks it down.
And what's so fascinating about this case is how aggressive both sides are being, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical celebrity lawsuit playbook.
Not at all.
Okay, so the story starts with this woman accusing Diddy of assaulting her.
Back in 2000.
At a VMA after party.
Mm-hmm.
And the really heavy part is she says she was only 13 years old at the time.
Yeah, that's a serious accusation.
And then to make matters even more complex, the lawsuit was recently updated and it now includes Jay-Z.
That's right.
Whoa, so we've got Diddy, Jay-Z, and an accusation from someone who was underage at the time. This is already a lot to unpack.
Absolutely. And think about how celebrities usually respond to lawsuits like this, right?
It's usually just a quick denial, and then they kind of disappear.
Exactly. A brief denial, maybe a statement from their lawyer.
And then radio silence, hoping it all goes away.
Right. Lay low, hope it blows over. But Jay-Z, he came out swinging.
Hard.
He didn't just deny the claims. He went straight after the attorney.
Tony Busby.
Tony Busby, yeah, accusing him of extortion.
Extortion. What does that even mean for our listener who might not be familiar with the term? What does that mean in this context?
So essentially, Jay-Z's claiming that Busby's using these accusations as leverage to force a settlement.
Like a payout.
Exactly, likely a big payout. It's almost like he's saying, pay up or I'll make sure everyone hears these accusations.
Oh, okay. And Jay-Z really didn't mince words, did he? Some of the quotes from his statement were pretty intense.
Oh, yeah. He did not hold back. He called Busby a fraud, an ambulance chaser, even said that he had neither honor nor dignity.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that he's angry.
Furious. It's a far cry from that no comment we usually hear from celebrities in these types of situations.
Yeah, it's a totally different approach. So is this just Jay-Z being Jay-Z?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there, is there some kind of strategy at play here?
That's a great question. And it's worth noting that Tony Busby himself has a bit of a reputation.
Oh, yeah.
He's represented some pretty big names in some very controversial cases.
Like who?
Travis Scott, Deshaun Watson.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, the list goes on, so it's not like he's shying away from a fight.
Sounds like he kind of seeks these cases out.
Yeah, he's known for taking on tough cases.
So you've got these two really strong personalities. They both have a lot to lose.
Yeah.
And now they're going head to head.
It's a legal heavyweight bout. So how did Busby respond to all this? To Jay-Z's accusations?
Well, he denied the extortion claims, right?
He did. Said his client was simply looking for confidential mediation.
Okay, mediation. That sounds pretty standard in these situations.
It is. But here's what's interesting. Mediation usually suggests that both sides are willing to consider a financial settlement.
Oh, okay. Well,
so while Busby denies the extortion, it does seem like maybe the goal was to quietly resolve this.
with some sort of payment.
Likely, yeah.
So maybe Busby's not being totally honest here.
It definitely raises some eyebrows. And then there's another twist.
Oh, there's more.
Before the accuser refiled her lawsuit and publicly named Jay-Z, he'd already taken legal action.
No way.
He'd filed a lawsuit against Busby for extortion, anonymously.
Hold on. So he was fighting back even before he was officially named in the suit?
Yep. And as soon as the accuser amended her lawsuit and named him, Jay-Z revealed himself as the plaintiff in that case.
He was already ahead of the game. So he's coming at this from multiple angles.
Exactly. He is not messing around. He is not waiting to be dragged through the mud. He's taking control.
Okay, so Jay-Z is clearly not playing around. But things get even more complicated because he's also filed a motion to have the accuser's name revealed.
That's right.
So his argument is basically, how can I defend myself if I don't even know who's accusing me?
Yeah, how can I properly defend myself without knowing who's making these accusations?
Which, on the surface, I mean, it makes sense. But then there's the fact that, she was so young when this allegedly happened.
That's the other side of the coin, right?
Yeah.
The legal system often grants anonymity to accusers.
Especially when they were minors.
Especially if they were minors at the time of the alleged incident.
It's about protecting them.
It's about protecting them from public scrutiny, from potential further harm.
Right. So, I mean, I guess it makes sense to try to protect the accuser, especially in a situation like this. But if the accused is saying that they can't defend themselves without knowing who's accusing them, then what happens? Like, how do you navigate that legally?
That's the big question here. It's this real tension between protecting the victim and making sure the accused gets a fair process, a fair trial, especially when, the accuser was underage at the time. It's tough.
Yeah, it sounds like a real challenge for the legal system. So what was Busby's response to this whole motion to reveal the accuser's name?
Well, he basically said that his client's not backing down at all.
Like at all?
Not at all. He said, quote, steadfast in her resolve and that she'll continue seeking justice.
Okay, so we've got this legal chess match happening, but before we get too far into the legal strategy here, let's just take a step back and make sure our listener really understands what these accusations are.
Okay, yeah, good point. So the woman who, as we said, wants to remain anonymous, she's claiming that back in 2000, she was given a drink at this VMA after party that made her feel sick.
And she was 13.
So remember, she was only 13 at the time.
That's pretty disturbing to think about a minor being in that situation with adults and potentially being given something that made her feel sick.
Right, and that's really a key point here, The lawsuit alleges that she was then assaulted by Diddy and another man who was unnamed in the initial lawsuit, but then later revealed to be Jay-Z.
And just to make it super clear for our listener, we are just talking about accusations right now. Nothing has actually been proven in court.
Exactly. That's really important to remember. And both Diddy and Jay-Z have denied everything. Vehemently denied all of these claims.
Okay, so we're kind of in this he said, she said situation, but the stakes are really high here. So what would happen if the accuser, if her case is successful? What are the potential consequences for Diddy and for Jay-Z?
Well, the ramifications could be huge. It's not just about their reputation.
Yeah.
We could be talking criminal charges.
Criminal charges, wow.
Yeah, potentially jail time, fines. It could be a lot of legal trouble.
This is huge. So, and on the flip side, what if these allegations are found to be false? Are there any legal risks for the accuser?
Yeah.
For her attorney?
There certainly could be. In cases like this, especially with high-profile individuals like this involved, you have the possibility of defamation lawsuits.
Defamation, right.
If it were proven that these accusations were made, maliciously, without any basis, in fact, in truth, then the accuser and her lawyer could be facing pretty serious consequences.
So there's a lot of risk for everyone involved.
Oh, absolutely.
And no wonder it's getting so heated.
It's high stakes, yeah.
So I want to circle back to Jay-Z's legal approach here, his aggressive strategy. Do you think this could backfire? Is there a chance that it could hurt his case more than help it?
It's definitely a possibility. Some legal experts say that his fiery response could potentially turn off a judge or a jury.
Oh.
They might see it as him overreacting.
Yeah.
Or even as an attempt to bully the accuser into being quiet.
Intimidate her.
Yeah.
Right. His language was pretty strong.
Oh, absolutely. But there's the other side of that coin too, right?
Yeah.
Some might say he's just defending himself against what he sees as a false accusation. He's saying, I'm not going to be a victim here. I'm going to fight back.
And it's not like this is the first time he's had to deal with a public legal battle.
No, not at all. He's dealt with controversy before, and he's never been one to just sit back and take it.
He's definitely not afraid of a fight, it seems like.
He's not going to back down easily. It's a high-risk, high-reward strategy. He's betting that his strong response will make the accuser and her attorney think twice about moving forward.
So it's almost like they're playing chicken with the legal system.
There's definitely a little bit of that going on.
Each side's trying to out-intimidate the other.
Exactly, but only time will tell whose approach is actually going to work. But one thing's for sure, this whole case is about a lot more than just the allegations themselves.
Yeah, what do you mean?
It brings up all these bigger questions about power and fame and accountability.
You're right. It really it feels like a microcosm of all those bigger conversations that we're having as a society right now about the Me Too movement and how we believe accusers and the importance of due process and at all of that.
Exactly. It's forcing us to think about all these really difficult questions. How do we protect accusers, especially those who were minors at the time, while also making sure the accused gets, a fair process? How do we navigate situations where there's such an obvious power dynamic at play?
Yeah, and those aren't easy questions, are they?
Not at all. And it's really important to remember that this isn't just some abstract concept, right?
Right.
These are real people. Their lives are being seriously affected by this whole case.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those deep dives that really makes you think, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
we've got this legal battle happening, and it touches on all these really fundamental issues. So I'm curious, I mean, where do you think this case might be headed? Any predictions?
It's hard to say for sure. The legal system, it can be pretty unpredictable.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling this one could drag on for a while.
Really?
Both sides seem ready to fight, and they've both got a lot on the line.
And like you said, it's not just about them, right?
Right.
I mean, the outcome of this case could affect so many other cases like this in the future. It could set a precedent for how these types of accusations are handled in the legal system.
Absolutely. It's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out. But even regardless of what happens legally, this case is already sparking all these important conversations, about power and accountability and how we seek justice when fame and public perception can have such a huge influence.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Jay-Z's aggressive approach, the accusations themselves, the potential legal ramifications for both sides, and then these bigger, broader societal questions that this case is raising. But there's one more piece to this puzzle that we need to look at. We've been talking about Jay-Z's his legal strategy and the accusations themselves and all the potential fallout, for everybody involved.
Right.
But there's this other layer that we haven't really talked about too much, and it's this whole issue of Jay-Z wanting the accuser's name to be made public and her wanting to stay anonymous.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it? You've got Jay-Z taking this very public, very aggressive approach, and then the accuser is looking for protection, privacy.
Yeah, and it kind of gets to the heart of what we see in a lot of these cases, doesn't it?
It does.
It's like this classic dilemma. How do you balance the right of the accused to actually face their accuser, with the accuser's right to feel safe and protected, especially when you consider, how young she was when this allegedly happened?
Right. It's a really tricky situation, and this case really highlights how complicated it can be.
Yeah.
On the one hand, Jay-Z's argument that he can't properly defend himself if he doesn't even know who's accusing him, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, there are, some really good reasons why an accuser might want to stay anonymous, especially with all this media attention.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine the kind of pressure and scrutiny that she would face. I mean, just the potential backlash alone could be so overwhelming.
Absolutely, and that's where the courts have to, kind of step in and try to find that balance. How do you ensure that things are fair for both sides while also understanding that there's this power dynamic at play here? I mean, we're talking about Jay-Z.
Yeah.
He's got, a huge platform and resources and influence that most people just don't have.
Yeah, it's kind of a David and Goliath situation, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, how do you even get a level playing field when you've got, one side with so much power and then the other side who's trying to protect their vulnerability?
Right, and the courts are going to have to really think about that power imbalance. And I think this case it's even bigger than just celebrity gossip,
What do you mean?
We're dealing with some really basic legal principles here, and how this turns out could have a ripple effect on how all these other cases, these kinds of accusations, are handled moving forward.
So for our listener who's been with us on this whole deep dive, what's the one thing you really want them to take away from this? What's the key takeaway here?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is that there are a lot of perspectives here, and we need to approach this whole situation with nuance, with a critical eye. It's so easy to just get caught up in the headlines and the drama and all the public statements, but we can't just jump to conclusions.
Right.
This is a really complex legal battle, and it has some pretty serious implications for everybody involved. So it really requires, us to think carefully about the facts and the law and the ethical questions that it brings up.
So basically, take a step back.
Yeah.
Look at it from every angle, and don't just accept everything we hear, right away.
Exactly. You got to question assumptions. You got to challenge the narratives, and really just try to understand how complex this whole thing is.
Right, and like you said, this isn't just some theoretical thing.
Right.
These are real people, and their lives are really being affected by this whole case.
It's a real life drama with some really serious consequences.
And it's a story that's probably going to keep unfolding.
Right.
So we'll definitely keep our listeners updated as things progress.
Absolutely.
But in the meantime, I mean, what would you say to our listener? What should they be thinking about as we move forward with this case?
I would just encourage everyone to really consider the questions that this whole thing brings up, How do we as a society, how do we protect victims while also protecting the right to a fair defense? How do we address those power imbalances that are, inevitably there in these kinds of situations? And how do we make sure that our legal system is actually serving justice for everyone involved?
Those are some really big questions.
They are.
And then they're not easy to answer, are they?
Not at all.
But they're definitely the kinds of questions we need to be asking ourselves.
Absolutely.
So until next time, keep those wheels turning, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.